Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak, the SMS code 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Let's cross over to Mogadishu and get the accounts of Anwar Abdi Fatah Bashir, who is the Executive Director, East Africa Institute for Peace and Governance, and a lecturer at the Somali National University, extensively written about the region. Anwar, good morning again to you. Sorry for the early communication breakdown. Talk to me about the state of affairs, the drawdown plan, and the intensified operations against Al-Shabaab by President Hassan's government.
Thank you so much, Ayub, and also thanks for the fellow panelists. As the country the troop contributors countries are supposed to be leaving from Somalia until December next year. And before that, Somali government is trying to capacitate Somali National Army to take over the responsibility, and they are currently over 20,000. And despite the trials and also the efforts that Somali government is showcasing, still Al-Shabaab threat is still foreseeable. But I think the effort and also the commitment that the Somali government led by Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and also Hamza is offering, especially for the last 1 year and a half. They liberated many fronts, especially from Galmudug and also Hirshabelle federal member states from Al-Shabaab, is precursor that the Somali government is ready to take over. It is security. So, yeah, the future is bright.
A key component of this entire aspect of security and the takeover of the security responsibilities are the people. What's the view from the capital, Mogadishu? I mean, which is a city that has a cocktail of all these Somali sub-clans. Is there support with the government? Because ideally there seems to be a challenge when it comes to ideology, and it seems that is very present among many who are supporters of Al-Shabaab in the capital, Mogadishu.
I think currently there is no gap or there is no mistrust between the citizens and also its government. The people and as well as the government are working together and at the same boat to defeat the perennial problem maker of Al-Shabaab. And the capital city of Mogadishu, where I'm currently, is getting better gradually in terms of security, and as well as the economy is developing. And there is one mood currently in Somalia with joining East Africa community, and that will give an extra, ability to defeat Al-Shabaab as well as the other terrorist groups. So the people and the Somali government are the same boat currently.
All right, and talk to me about, as a lecturer at the Somali National University, the process. I mean, and this is not only an issue confined with the President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud's government, dating back to the other administrations too, starting from Sheikh Sharif, then to President Farmajo, and now to President Hassan. What has been the progress made in terms of building institutions and systems that are meant to work for the Somali people?
Yes, the public institutions are becoming, more large and more efficient and more competent, and the country developing gradually day by day. And maybe if one of the panelists or even you visit in Somalia, especially, you can see the development. I cannot even explain in words. The economic is booming, as well as the security is getting better. And many people are coming to Mogadishu, not only Somalis, but also non-Somalis. And the private sector is also a vibrant. So Mogadishu currently is a good city to be lived, and is getting, hour by hour, the security is, getting better. So that's the image of Mogadishu and the entire Somalia.
Okay, thank you. We'll be getting your accounts as we progress here on the broadcast. Our thanks. And Dr. Gidewa, coming to you. Yeah. Largely what we have talked about is the military aspect of fighting the fighting Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And back at home, we have had, of course, to systematically build our intelligence capacity, invest in it, ensure that it does efficiently work for the Kenyan people in forestalling attacks, as the Major Retired, who as well sits at the Privileged Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee of the National Assembly, had echoed. But are we also fighting this on the domestic front here? In the essence that if, to give you an example, in 2015, when the Garissa University, the unfortunate attack happened in Garissa County, the student who led was a law graduate. I mean, he's not so unsuspected person. I mean, but you can imagine the infiltration done to even the intellectuals in the society. Yeah. Have we achieved on the domestic front in fighting terror cells that operate in the country? Yeah,
thanks, Abe, for your question. I think Kenya has come a long way significantly in countering violent extremism, okay, and preventing violent extremism. A lot of programs run within the Kenyan coast and within Nairobi. There's been a lot in what the government in scaling up its intelligence capacity and just trying to counter this violent extremism. Yeah. That fight, though, has run into some few roadblocks because of the continued perception of the Somali community within the country of victimization on their part. We had, like, some few weeks back, we had issues that happen in Northeastern whereby if they want to get ID cards or passports, you know, the vetting and the rigor, the extra rigor that they go through. And these are Kenyan citizens who are born in Kenya. So the Kenyan government also needs to handle this very delicately in terms of our first line of defense in terms of intelligence and security, other than the trained people, is the Kenyan Somali community. They know who the strangers among us would be, all right? Because the language is the same, but they would know who has infiltrated, who's come across the border. So if the Kenyan government does not make efforts in inclusivity in trying to make the Kenyan Somali community feel that they are not victimized in this fight, I think we are going to leave ourselves exposed. Have we done a lot? Yes, I believe our security forces have scaled up a lot of programs at the coast in countering violent extremism, programs in Isili, quite a number of these things have gone up and achieved a lot. People who've come or defected from Al-Shabaab have been received well within the community and, you know, been reintegrated into society. But for me, I still feel where we still need to up our game in terms of government preparedness is in the inclusivity of the Somali community within the country, making them feel that you're part of this fight, you are our first line of defense. So on that, if that gets taken care of, I have a feeling, other than the trained security forces, we will actually move to a much better place. Yeah.
Okay, and is Honorable Bashir coming to you? Is the intelligence investment worth the cost? I mean, when you talked about, of course, some information that we, the public, might not be privy to or are privileged to access or even see. But in terms of that working out for us, since Dusit happened in January 2019, it's now 4 years with no substantial, I mean, magnitude attack here happening in the country. That coming down to, of course, the investment. But talk to me about how the process with which the communities are engaged and how that has helped the security agencies in forestalling attacks.
Thank you, Ayub. I think we have what we call lessons learned. And the security agencies have learned that you cannot do without the community. And that's why community engagement has been now at the forefront in the fight against Al-Shabaab. This issue of CVE actually has gone to most parts, the coast, parts of Northeastern, and it's all about engaging the community. Because Al-Shabaab comes with an ideology to change the mind of the youths and some fellows, including people who are learned, professionals. So that requires a change of mindset. And that engagement of the community is key to the fight in Al-Shabaab. And that's what, even as leaders from the region, we've been advocating for that. Please engage the community. Yeah. This is how you will win the fight against Al-Shabaab. And our intelligence teams, certainly they're doing a good job. And our committee was last week at the NIS headquarters. And of course, as an oversight committee, we have had a discussion on what they did, what they do, and what they need to do. And I can tell you that they're up to the task. They're doing so much that is happening behind the scenes, and they're trying their level best. And of course, they require a lot of resources. You know, this thing requires resource, and so we need to resource them adequately to ensure that Kenya remains safe. But when you talk about also attacks in cities and towns, are scaled down. What about all the towns in the border areas?
The frontier counties.
The frontier counties. So actually, this withdrawal will have an impact on towns along the borders. What happens to this porous border, 700 kilometers, which is porous? But of course, that is something that we discussed with the Ministry of Defense, and they're coming up with adequate plans to ensure that there are no gaps. Of course, these are plans that will be put in place when that time comes. But of course, preparations is in place. So our main concern is withdraw, yes, but what happens to these border areas along Kenya and Somalia? You might leave Somalia, and then what happens to us? But I can, as my brother Anwar was saying, certainly the Somali government is now up to the task. They are doing so much. Actually, to what we're feeling as leaders from the region is that they are being chased away from Somalia and coming to our place.
Okay, because of the intensified operations?
Intensified operations that's happening inside Somalia, along the borders. So we're feeling like they're coming back to our areas because they're feeling the heat. So I think the capacity of the Somali government now is far much better than when Kenya moved in there. And so this withdrawal, of course, it takes 1 year now until December. And I'm sure now between that time and this time, there'll be adequate preparation by the Somali government. And they will now know that AMISOM or the ATMIS troops are withdrawing. So that reality will sink in them and that they must put measures in place. And as you said, my brother said, if you go to Mogadishu, I was there some times back, it's not what people think. You know, there are 10,000 Kenyan local teachers from Kenya in Mogadishu.
Non-Somali Kenyans?
Non-Somali Kenyans teaching in schools.
Engineers, teachers, doctors.
Several professionals in Mogadishu. So I think the prospect is there. Them joining EAC is there. So I think leaving them to do their job is better. And you can't be there in perpetuity.
Yeah, but of course, no perpetuity.
Yes, you can't. But what happens is our borders.
Okay.
There's 700 kilometers along the borders. Certainly, I'm sure the Ministry of Defense has concrete plans. And as a committee that oversights, we'll ensure that they do it.
Okay. George, talk to me then about what Mheshimiwa has laid out, the safety of the border and safeguarding the porous border. How key is the close cooperation and these largely on intelligence bases between the governments of Somalia and Kenya for that border to be safeguarded, in that it can work out for both ends?
I believe that is something that we need to focus on right now, because immediately Kenya announced that she is going to open the Kenya-Somali border. You saw the number of attacks increase. What was the cause of this? And as you've said, and as Mheshimiwa said here, there's no country that can 100% say that, yes, we've protected our people, we've closed our borders, nothing can cross over. And this is where now what we call having the community, being part of the security arrangement is important. And that is what has been missing in Kenya. Remember, when we had Westgate, immediately the president said, now we're going to have Manyumba Kumi, the Manyumba Kumi initiative. It started and then fizzled out. What was the reason? And I think this is where we are failing. And in security, we call this popular intelligence. We can have the NIS, we can have the DMI, that is the Director of Military Intelligence, but they cannot be able to collect everything. And all enemies operate within the community. And we need to rope in the community in our fight against extremism, in our fight against the Al-Shabaab. And if we fill that gap, definitely, even the threat along the border is going to reduce drastically. We cannot eliminate it 100%, but it will reduce, because you will find that the community will be able to be sharing intel, popular intel, with the security apparatus. And this, in most cases, where we have intel from the community, it's actionable intel. And I'll give an example. We had Fazul living in Lamu for more than 10 years. He married there. He lived among the community, and he became part of the community. Literally, do we know that he was the enemy within? But had we roped in the community and told them, look here, this is what is happening, and you people need to be ready to help the government with information. The attack here, Dusit 2, these people lived amongst the community. And the misgiving that we've been having, we've been looking and saying that it's the Somali community that are members of the Al-Shabaab. All attacks that have happened in Kenya are not done by people from the Somali community. You remember the likes of Kinawere, all the way from Mumias. The sleeper cells in Kenya.
Gishui Dusit.
Gishui Dusit. The sleeper cells in Kenya are not in Isli. You will find them in Paponditi, that is in Kisumu County. You will find them in Siaya. So our focus on the Somali community is also being a major problem. So we are not investing in other people, believing that it's only the Somalis that can be able to carry out attacks in the country. So the problem along the border, I've been to Kiunga. In fact, when I was still in service, I operated in Kiunga. The communities in Kiunga, look at the way Al-Shabaab is thriving inside the Boni forest. Where is the problem? So this border needs to be protected by the Somali National Army, by the Kenya Army, and at the same time, we need to invest in the community. Tell them we are part of the solution. And you share intelligence, let us win the minds and hearts of the people along the border and telling them we are in this together.
Thank you.
As opposed to now going there, victimizing people, as Dr. Ria said here, telling them you are part of the problem, yet they should be part of the solution. I think this is what we need now to focus on. Instead of using tactics, let us use strategy. As we are withdrawing from Somalia, let us come up with concrete plans of having the community be part of the solution. And I think that will help us win against this common enemy.
And economic development goes a long way into this. Let's get this soundbite from the American Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin III, who was here a fortnight ago and met the Kenyan Defense Secretary Adan Duale at the Defense Headquarters here in the county of Nairobi, talking about his meeting with President Mahmoud in Djibouti before concluding his Africa visit in Angola. This is what he said.
We had a great discussion on Somalia today, and I think we both agree that Somalia has made significant progress in the last year against Al-Shabaab. You may have heard us say earlier that they've retaken more territory in the last year than they had in the previous 5 years. But we know that progress is not always a straight line, and so we may see things improve significantly on one day, and maybe we'll see challenges on the next day. So our approach across the continent has always been a combination of defense capability, development, and also diplomacy. And I think that's the right combination to ensure that you create lasting effects. But again, we've seen a lot of progress. Progress is not always straight line. There'll be challenges and setbacks from time to time, but a lot of progress in the last year.
Okay, Anwar, coming to you, then talk to me about, that's Lloyd Austin III, who was here in Kenya, Djibouti before, and then in Luanda, Angola. What level of accompanied economic development projects is the Somali government undertaking besides the military operations against Al-Shabaab?
Yes, indeed. You know, the Somali government, especially the Somali National Army, are currently qualified for neutralizing and stabilizing the country. So, and the Somali is paying a lot of effort to meet that requirement. There is another emerging issue that Somalia is awaiting the final announcement from the EAC community. And if Somalia is accepted to join East African community, there will be a customs, you know, in the porous border between Somalia and Kenya. So defeating Al-Shabaab is not meant that terrorists will not come to Somalia, but together the Somali National Army as well as the Kenya Defense Force working together to neutralize not only Al-Shabaab, but also potential terrorists is one factor or one prerequisite for Somalia joining to East African community. But currently what we have seen for the last 2 years, the Somali government is committed to liberate Al-Shabaab and other terrorist groups from Somalia. And the good news is the Somali people, local community, are supporting the government. So there is no place to infiltrate or to hide any terrorist group that's posing threat to our security, not only security, but also the neighboring countries, including Kenya. And thanks all the troop contributors country, they did a good job. And this time, the rest is on Somali government, especially Somali National Army. Okay,
Dr. Kidua.
Yes.
Before we go to the DRC question and the anchor role Kenya does play in the region, largely we had the amnesty that the late Interior CS, Major Retired, General Retired Joseph Nkaiseri had extended to returnees who largely were brainwashed, manipulated, that they are financial gains if you join as folks, and then they realized on the other end, indeed, there was nothing, and then came back, and then there was the amnesty by the government. But largely, there has been reluctance in terms of their accommodation back or reintegration back into the society. How can that work out for Kenyans who are willing and who might have been manipulated by the cause for Al-Shabaab, for them to reintegrate back into the society without being vilified?
All right, thanks for your question. World over in post-conflict reconstruction, the reintegration question is usually, especially when you do DDR, disarmament, demobilization, reintegration. The reintegration aspect of ex-combatants is usually a very, very tough issue. Reason being, number one, you're asking these ex-combatants, let's call them that, to come back into societies, sometimes who they harmed, all right, during their stay in those radical groups. And just because of the stigma that they come with. For example, coming back to the Al-Shabaab, ex-combatants from Al-Shabaab, you can imagine young people, let's just paint a hypothetical situation of young people coming back into society. They left when they were teenagers and they're coming back in their early 20s. And they're coming into a society where other mothers and the community in general feel like if they come back here, they're going to come and spoil our children. They're going to come and spoil our sons. So that stigmatization is usually the largest, is usually the biggest challenge in all that. In CVE programs in Kenya, from what I've read widely, they've run into those hurdles of trying to reintegrate back these ex-combatants to society, and they run into these issues of the society not wanting them to come back. My suggestion would be sometimes it's good to reintegrate them in areas, in other areas other than the communities that they came back from. Places where maybe they can settle back with anonymity. People do not know who they were before. But in some cases, they will have to come back to the societies they left from. Okay? Their mothers, their fathers know exactly what they went to do, and they've come back. So dealing with that stigma is usually not a very easy thing. A lot of psychosocial support is required, and I think Kenya has invested heavily in that, especially at the coastal region. It is invested heavily in the psychosocial support of these people. So reintegration is never an easy thing, for the simple reason, when these people come back, the society doesn't want to accept that they have reformed. Two, they are coming back, and there could be other sleeper cells in the society who will follow them up saying, these are the people who betrayed us. You defected and you betrayed us, and you're probably giving intelligence, you're giving out intelligence information against us. So that could also, it could also pose as a security risk for the ex-combatants. So just having a very well thought out plan on how you bring them back into society, preparing the society that they're coming back into, taking them through psychosocial support in accepting them back, and also providing them with protection in one way or another, so that they do not get backlash from elements following them from Al-Shabaab, because people would feel that you people defected and you're the one going to give intelligence reports against us. So just to prevent all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. George, and this is a very important question. Besides the plan to leave Somalia, one of the other areas that will be a point of focus for Nairobi will be the politics of regional jubaland administration, which Kenya was key about and keen on its administration under the current regional leadership of Ahmed Madobe. I mean, talk to me about what to some extent is viewed as Nairobi's involvement in unnecessary sub-clan political intensity on how that part of Somalia, the Jubaland region, is administered?
I think we created Jubaland. If you read the literature about Jubaland, it was part of Kenya's plan to create a buffer zone that will prevent the Al-Shabaab from crossing from Somalia and getting into Kenya. And I think this is something that we need to come out clearly and sort out. Because the problem largely in Somalia is that you see there's some semblance of peace and there's some semblance of peace and order in Jubaland, and there's also Somaliland. You'll find that these are small clans. But the cocktail of clans in the larger Somali is what is bringing problems. And there was that mistrust, especially between the Farmajo government and the Nairobi government. And this has created a lot of animosity, and clearly we were not forging ahead with our plan to pacify Somali. And I think this is something now that needs to be handled diplomatically. Now that we're getting out of Somali, we should explain ourselves to the region, we should explain ourselves to the neighboring countries. This happened, and that was then. So we need to get a diplomatic solution to that, so that we do not look like Pharisees among the local, the neighboring countries. And I believe the creation of Jubaland helped Kenya deal with the problem of Al-Shabaab. I think it toned down this attacks that we're witnessing across the border. Now that we are getting out, let us look at a diplomatic way of handling the Jubaland issue and the larger Somali community issue.
Yeah. Honorable Bashir, how key is Jubaland in this whole context of talking about withdrawal plans?
I think the intention was good, that Jubaland does have a buffer zone on our border. Unfortunately, that has not been achieved. We have a number of areas that are not covered by Jubaland, mainly because of clan dynamics. For example, the Gedo region, you know, the clans that are in Gedo region are not in sync with the administration in Jubaland. And so the Jubaland administration is non-existent, not present in those places. And yet, we are propping up Jubaland to ensure that they become a power zone in our area. So when you look at that dynamics, and you know that was evident in the Somalis' previous administration. And of course, there have been altercations between the previous administration of Somalia and the previous administration of Kenya as well. And we could see it. So I think Jubaland's intention for the Kenya government to say, please become a buffer zone, was good. But the Jubaland administration, under the current administration, did not do that much. As we speak, Gedo region, all the way from Mandera, is not policed by Jubaland administration. Why? They have issues with the clans that live in that area. And I'm sure you understand the clan dynamics in that place. That clan that comes from that area was the same clan that was with the previous administration president. So there's that issue of, and the president accusing Kenya of saying, you're siding so much with Jubaland, and yet they're not covering these areas. So if you ask me, and the Jubaland administration, they might have done 50%. The other 50%, no, because they are not covering all these areas. And they are yet to come to terms with the issues of clan dynamics. They are yet to reconcile that these areas are covered or manned by clan A, and that they need to get in touch with clan A. So this rift between Jubaland clans is what is causing insecurity in the Mandera belt. You know, in Mandera area, we are neighboring with the Gedo region. Gedo region is part of Jubaland. Jubaland is not present. Why is it not present? Because they're not in good terms with that clan. So if you ask me how they performed, 50%.
How does it then get solved or resolved? Does it boil down to the administration in Jubaland reaching out all the clans and ensuring that they are on board? And
exactly.
In fairness, in transparency,
it's true.
In all fronts,
the Jubaland administration has to get in touch with all the clans living in that area and ensure that they pacify the area. But unfortunately, you don't care, simply because the previous administration of our government was propping so much the Jubaland administration. And I think there's also issue of, has that administration overstayed in Jubaland? It has. So I think they need to do the elections, and Kenya should not even interfere with it. Okay. Let them just elect whoever they want.
All right. And Anwar, coming to you, and this is largely on what appears to inform geopolitics. And we had experienced frosty relations between the previous administrations of Kenya and Somalia. We had President Farmajo and Uhuru, who disagreed fundamentally on many issues, also among them Jubaland, the maritime dispute, that the matter which was dispensed with by the International Court of Justice. But talk to me now the prospects of an understanding to somewhat some scale between President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud and President Ruto on how Jubaland will be administrated and largely all the clans brought on board to address the very glaring animosity at the moment in the region.
Thank you. Before I answer that question, let me comment on the issue of clan dynamics in Somalia, especially Jubaland, and the controversy and also the competition power among the Somali clan. I think Kenya has the right to clean its border, the porous border between Somalia and Kenya, and also to defend its country from any terrorist activities. But at the end of the day, the clan dynamics, the controversy, the competition with the Somali clans for power is under the Somali context, and the Somali government can handle it as long as Somalia is a sovereign country and there is no need any meddling in its internal affairs. When it comes to the relationship, the diplomatic relationship between Kenya and Somalia has been a good, but during the former regime led by President Farmajo and also President Uhuru Kenyatta, there has been a diplomatic tension, frequent diplomatic tension, and that has caused a lot of animosity, and many people, both the two countries, have been complaining and also have been suffering for that diplomatic facility. But the newly elected government, led by President Hassan Sheikh and Prime Minister Hamza, they are doing great. Also, they have a good relationship with the current regime in Kenya, President Ruto. So everything is good currently.
Okay, Anwar, talk to me then about the timelines here, because the Somali constitution is at a provisional stage, and its implementability and the elections that have been largely delayed across the regions that were supposed to happen simultaneously, the national presidential elections coming up. I mean, what are the timelines are we looking at here? And to be specific on the elections in Jubaland, because there's always tension when it comes to that region and how it's administered. And the current president, Madobe, largely, according to, or in the eyes of many, especially in the Gedo region, has been propped up and supported by Nairobi. How can that notion be disabused from his end, from where he administers the region, which is Kismayu, and bring all the clans on board for fairness, for accountability, and largely a region that is stable?
Thank you for that question. It's a very critical question. And when it's the issue of local elections for the federal member states, especially Jubaland, there is egregious delay, and the current administration in Jubaland, though they are trying to conduct a free and fair local election, but that target is yet to be met. Not only Jubaland, but also other federal member states, there is tension when it comes to holding the elections timely. But I think it's not a big deal as long as the Somali government is trying to compromise and also to reach out an agreement.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Gidua, coming to you. This is also an extension because the defense forces are also in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yeah. And that is as part of the military wing of the diplomatic mission on course and midwifed by the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Yeah. Talk to me about how this places Kenya as an anchor state in the region. We are exiting Somalia, now active in the DRC, sending police to Haiti. I mean, are we playing our diplomatic cards well?
Yeah, I think we are. But remember, our foreign policy, one of the anchors is peace diplomacy. It's one of the 5 pillars of Kenya's foreign policy. So under peace diplomacy, as a region, as Kenya being a peace-loving country, we have in the past sent peacekeeping missions all over the world, in very many, in Africa and out of Africa. So being the big brother in the region, because that's what I consider Kenya to be, we are the hegemon state in the East African region. I think it is our role. We have a geopolitical obligation to ensure that our neighbors are peaceful. DRC being the latest entrant into the East African community, Kenya definitely, and Kenya, a lot of Kenyan investments. Remember, at least we know of Equity Bank and many other investments, and I'm sure probably other smaller investments which are not out there in the public. There are many Kenyans in Congo, eastern parts of Congo, some in Kinshasa. So ensuring that there is peace in DRC went a long way in bolstering Kenya's image in peace diplomacy. Sending our soldiers, sending our police force to Haiti. I know there's been a lot of talk out there, a lot of critics out there saying we did not do the right thing. Yeah. I believe we answered Haiti's call to help, okay? It's a very daunting and complex mission, but if we are prepared well, we'll probably make a difference there. And with the money that the American government has promised, $200 million, with that kind of...
$100 million.
$100 million. Yeah, juries out there, $100 to $200 million. With that money, we could bolster our force to go and do a good job right there. And of course, with the right approach in Haiti. Our involvement in Somalia was for national interest, of course, to protect ourselves, prevent them from coming in. So Kenya's role in peacekeeping in the region is right within its docket. As the regional hegemon in East Africa and anchored on our peace diplomacy, we did the right thing.
But who is the Kenyan government involving in engaging in Haiti? Because there's no government.
Yeah, well, their Prime Minister Ariel's government, of course, came in after President Moise was assassinated. And for the longest time, that appeared to be the solution the Haitians had for themselves. Now that he's the one who has appealed to help for help, on just purely humanitarian grounds, because now, largely, everybody else kept out of that theater of conflict. So Kenya answered the call, all right, and said, let's try and make a difference. Think about it this way. We may not be the richest and most powerful country, but we were sharing the little that we could with them, all right? And hoping we will be the forerunners of other countries. And others agreed to contribute their troops and their soldiers when Kenya agreed to also send. Think about, let me use a negative analogy. Think about people who want to throw stones. The question usually is who's going to throw the first stone. All right, then everybody else joins and gets the courage to do it. So in this case, Kenya agreed to contribute that first 1,000. And other 10 countries have agreed to contribute troops. So hopefully, with this logistical support and with a different approach in Haiti in terms of let the Kenyan specialized units that go there and go there not with an intention of clamping down and using force. I'll borrow from what Mheshimiwa used. Let's go and use that community approach to try and just involve the Haitians in trying to come up with a solution for their problems. I think the Kenyan force...
Well, the challenge is the Prime Minister, Henry, enjoys no legitimacy in the eyes of the Haitians. I mean, his transition timeline ended. According to many, he enjoys no mandate from the people, disbanded the electoral commissions, suspended the justice minister, the judge who called for him to appear before the court over his alleged involvement in the assassination of Moise. I mean, he has done a lot that has largely synced Haiti, and also ending the subsidy, which is largely the reason as why there are protests in Port-au-Prince, the capital, which is leading to the pressure on him and the subsequent international mission that is set to take effect, and that challenged in court, of course, here. Because the argument is that there's no measure of reciprocity from the governments on the other end, since there's no government that enjoys the mandate of the people. Yes, George. Is that worth a cause, going to Haiti?
I mean, what we need to stop doing to Haiti is giving them that leeway of always asking for international intervention in their own internal problems. That dependency syndrome that I talked about earlier is in Haiti, because we've always had intervention since 1915 to date. And I think what I'm looking at here, basically, probably the UN has thought otherwise. Because initially we had military interventions. But right now we're not sending troops. We are sending civilian policemen. And when you talk about civilian policemen, it means we are not going to have people living in barracks, people living in camps. we are going to send a group that is going to integrate with the local community. And that might be the game changer. Because now we are not coming here to fight you, we are coming here to help you. But will that work? Will the people accept that kind of intervention? Because already they are talking about this is a force that is coming here to clamp on us. They're coming to infringe on our rights. Remember when we had the Brazilian military there, sent by the UN, we called it the United Nations Stabilization Mission to Haiti. What happened is that they were accused of human rights violations. When we had cholera there, it was said that this cholera has been brought about by the UN. You see, so the community was against that intervention. Now, when we are going there, right? Noble cause, but are we acceptable?
Okay, and
when we are talking about taking their specialized forces, it means we are still going back to that issue of going to fight. We should not be sending fighting patrols to Haiti.
With a gang that is better armed.
Gangs that have been equipped by the Americans. Those arms that you see in Haiti are military hardware. And here we are sending a police. Yes, we can also equally equip our police because well-trained, well-equipped, we have troops here, I do. The RDUs, we have the REC company, we have the border patrol units. These people are well-trained, well-equipped, but to suit the Kenyan environment. So how are we going to operate in Haiti? That integration with the community. If the community will accept us, we can achieve our goal. But if you're not acceptable, as you've said, we don't have structures in Haiti.
Well, they already said that we don't need you here.
We don't have a government in Haiti. So who are we going to work with? And especially this issue when it comes to language is going to be a problem because when we went to East Timor, when we went to Yugoslavia, we sent the police there, Bosnia, we sent the police to Liberia, they were working alongside the local police and the local community. So the issue of language did not come in. But here, we are probably going to meet a hostile community and it's going to pose a major problem to us and a risk to our officers.
Your committee, I'm sure, is very critical. Yes.
I think in Kenya here, we're dealing with issues of semantics. Who called Kenya to Haiti? It's the people of Haiti. You see, that is the sovereign people of Haiti. Let's not look at who's suffering. It's the people of Haiti. It's not the current prime minister. And as you said, people are demonstrating and saying, don't come. Who are those people? Those are sympathizers of the gangs. So why do you want to listen to people who are sympathizing with the gangs? The Kenya police or Kenya government is responding to a plea by a sovereign country. Remember, we need to play on the global stage because we are members of the United Nations. If you're called upon, you don't chicken out. And so it's not about who called you and who did not call you. We all know that the former president was assassinated. But the structures of Haiti are also in place. The Haiti police is struggling. So the Kenya police will probably go and work hand in hand with Haiti police to ensure there's peace and security. And people are talking about the police, can they do these things? Remember, police also has a number of specialized units. You know, people are talking about, oh, you can't control banditry here, A, B, C, D. I mean, surely. Let's not go that route.
All right.
That's not the kind of debate that we need to engage.
Okay, let's have the proper debate then, and this is on substance and accountability, because you sit in a very critical committee. And the next stop is Parliament, where you are a member. When you say the people of Haiti, I mean, we are talking about a prime minister who extended his term after the assassination of Moise. There's no parliament. There are no lawmakers. The Constitution establishes, Honorable Bashir, you'll have the time to respond, because this is a follow-up on your answer. The Constitution establishes that there ought to be a measure of reciprocity when deploying the National Police Service. This is an area that we have never ventured into as a country, because we have the tradition of deploying the Kenya Defense Forces, which is provided for in the Constitution. One, when you talk about the measure of reciprocity, what government are you dealing with when there is no parliament, when there are no lawmakers, when there is someone who, in the view of the Haitians, is a dictator who extended his term, disbanded the Electoral Commission, suspended the Justice Minister, and the fuel subsidy? I mean, who are you dealing with? It's just a matter of law.
Thank you very much. And when we went to Somalia, who called us there?
Well, Parliament approved.
No, even this one, Parliament will approve. Okay. Let me get very clear for Kenyans to know. Parliament ultimately will approve the deployment of the police or any troops outside Kenya. Parliament must approve. It doesn't come to Parliament. It will approve. It will come to the committee. They look at it, and Parliament must approve. No doubt about it. But I'm trying to answer the issue of saying who called you. Yeah. And I'm just trying to say, we're discussing about the Somali issue here. Who called us to Somalia in the first place?
Okay. And this is my question.
You need to understand some of these things.
Okay.
There's a need that made us move to Somalia. There was no government that called us. So sometimes there's the need that, look, this country is burning. It's your neighbor. It is it's part of the African continent, for example. Africans are there. And sometimes you need to look at who called you, who did not call you. And it's a matter of looking at, why do they not have a government? Because of the gangs. It's the gangs that has caused the lack of government right now in Haiti.
Okay.
So the only person that is present there struggling is the prime minister.
All right.
With no whatever. But as I said, Haiti police is in place. We all agree. Are they not in place? They do. So the Kenyan police will go and work hand in hand with the Haiti police. They're not working with the politicians. They're not working with the ministers.
Okay, but
ultimately, it is Parliament that will approve. So don't get it wrong that the police are just going out without the approval of the Parliament. And when Parliament seizes this matter, they will actually look at it critically, debate. Sometimes the Parliament can also say, don't go. But they will look at matters critically.
You have just given the stamp of approval. Okay.
Not of course, if... In my own view, we need to go and play our role in the global stage.
All right. I agree with you.
And you look at the background of Haiti. Don't look at about the issue of we can't speak their language. Did you speak the East Timor language? Did you speak Kosovo's language?
Okay, no, Bashir, I come to
peacekeeping is a global language.
I need a clarity here because the KDF Act clearly stipulates the mode of deployment, Parliament's approval, and how the boots should be deployed out of the country. I have again restated the National Police Service equally. It was never anticipated, but there must be a measure of reciprocity. You talked about an operational police force in Haiti, right? Again, you can't delink that from a government that ought to be operating because the police must be given directives. There must be a government in place. We have no parliament in Haiti, so who are you engaging when you go there? It's a simple question.
And let me ask you, I agree. These are questions Kenyans are asking, but I'm trying for them to understand this bit. And I'm trying to make them understand that when we went to Somalia, the Parliament of Somalia did not approve us. We didn't. It was like, there's a problem in Somalia, Al-Shabaab is taking root, Al-Shabaab is causing chaos, and Kenya police react and join AMISOM. Who did that? It was under United Nations Security Council. In this, the same. The United Nations has approved the deployment of Haiti. So let us not look at differently from, we have engaged in other places where there was no semblance of government. Somalia is just next door. There was no government. And right now, we are in Somalia as well. So what we're talking about is, are we approving our troops to go to Haiti, approved by Parliament? That is the people's representative. That is certainly yes. It will come to the floor of the House. It will be debated. It will be engaged. And the voice of Kenyans will be heard through Parliament. And it will be known. But the issue of saying who's calling, we have been called through the international fora. United Nations has approved. We are members of the United Nations. Two, and we are going to Haiti because other countries have shunned away. Probably this will be a game changer, that Kenya has restored peace for the first time in Haiti, where big names have shunned away. So let's not just say because America has shunned away ABCD. So what? If you go in and provide peace and leadership to Haiti in terms of restoring peace and dealing with the gangs, I'm sure other countries will say, oh, I wish we could have joined. And we're not the only ones. We're only the lead team. Canada will be there. Other countries will be there. So we're not the only ones who are going. So if you ask this question as well, who's inviting Canada?
I mean, that's up to the jurisdiction to determine. So this is the Kenyan question.
This is the Kenyan question. The same way we went to Somalia, that there were no government in place, and we went there and we're still there, we still go to Haiti.
But KDF's deployment is different from the National Police Service.
Exactly. The Act says very well. And if you read the Act very well, it says may. There's a word called may.
May means mandatory.
No. They may be deployed outside. It says so. If you read the Act, the Police Act very well as well. It says internal, but can be called upon to be deployed elsewhere. That's what the Act says also.
And also continues to say, because you have cherry-picked that, continues to say that there ought to be a degree of reciprocity.
Exactly. Correct. There's no problem.
Just a question of clarity.
But it will come to Parliament. These are things that will be debated. They will not go out of the country without Parliament's approval.
Thank you. And we're out of time. But just a question of the constitution, because the Kenyan people invested, the aspirations are in that document. You are parliamentarians, you sit at a very critical house that looks into matters of accountability, and of course checking over the executive and accountability purposes. Let's look at the feedback before the curtains come down here on the broadcast. Here is what we are saying on the hashtag Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. The first one here coming from Bobo Tionowino says Kenya has done well stabilizing the government of Somalia from the terror group of Al-Shabaab. It's now time for the Kenyan Defense Forces to pull out, come back home and leave them to rule themselves. Next is Engineer Lazaro. He says the invasion of Somalia was somehow part of the reckless reaction without proper intelligence report considerations. Kenya should now strategize her foreign policies in order to avoid dragging our armies into costly and popular conflicts. And this from Wasiaka says, outlining Kenya Defense Forces, pulling Kenya Defense Forces out of the troubled Somalia, the nation will not hold terror attacks in Kenya, and this will undermine national security. And Peter Gesura 89 says, our borders, especially at the north and Lamu, are porous. Let our troops come back home and curb the threat of Al-Shabaab militia. Remy Butia says, in leaving Somalia, we should convey our gratitude as a nation to our soldiers and get them the best psychological care to prepare them for the re-entry into the society. Next up is Gode Barasawere says, time has come for troops to exit Somalia and create a bulwark around our borders. The mission ended and they need to come back home and to feel the smell of our rain air and quench their long homesickness. Okelo Mwalimu says, in my opinion, Kenyan soldiers have overstayed in Somalia. However, I also think that their stay has thwarted terror attacks in the country. And by the way, whoever awarded us the Big Brother medal should take it back to enable us focus more on our domestic issues. That is from Okelo Mwalimu. And the time, we should take your brief comments here, but we are out of time. Thanks for your time. Gentlemen here, Anwar Abdul Fattah Bashir joining us from the Somali capital, Mogadishu. The Executive Director of East Africa Institute for Peace and Governance, as well a lecturer at Somali National University. George Musamale is a security commentator. Thank you for your time, a former member of the service. Honorable Major Retired Bashir Abdullahi, the MP Mandela North, the Vice Chair of the Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee of the National Assembly. And Dr. Edward Githua is a lecturer at the United States International University, specializes in international relations and diplomacy. Thanks for your time as well here on the broadcast, for keeping in your comments coming and waking up with us here on the broadcast. We'll see you on Friday morning here at the same time. Till then, good morning.